Minister Anand, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
It was about a month, just a bit over a month ago, that we had this significant U.S.-Canada balloon incident. And at the time, I remember you saying that you would be very careful about making assumptions at this point. Time has passed, we've learned a lot. What can you now say?
Well, we're cooperating very closely with the United States in terms of the data that it is retrieving from the downed balloon off of its eastern coast. And we, in terms of the suspected balloon that was above Yukon, were not able to retrieve debris given how remote and rugged the terrain was. But having said all of that, we do have in place our Indo-Pacific strategy, and that calls for us to be eyes wide open on China, for us to make sure we're supporting a free and open Indo-Pacific, for us to be cognizant and challenge China where we need to and cooperate where we must. These are kind of the guideposts for our relationship with China now, inherent in our Indo-Pacific strategy.
Is there a change in the nature of the relationship between the U.S. and Canada and China on the security, on the defense side? Has it significantly deteriorated over the course of the past months?
Well, let's just take a look at what is happening in the Indo-Pacific. In the recent past, China has threatened the safety and security of our RCAF aircraft by buzzing our planes. So I would say that we are watching activities in the Indo-Pacific very carefully. We are adding a third frigate, for example. We are going to be undertaking training exercises with our partners and allies. We are going to be working with them in cybersecurity also. All of this is under the umbrella of our Indo-Pacific strategy. And the reason is that the global environment has changed. We are seeing the world become increasingly dark. And that relates not only to Russia's further invasion of Ukraine, but also increasingly aggressive moves by China.
You're very engaged through NATO. There's been a lot of push to do more for Ukraine. Where do you think the coalition is heading on the Russia-Ukraine issue over the coming, say, 3-6 months? Because we know for the last year, we've seen a lot of escalation in terms of what the West is doing, and also in terms of how the Russians are perceiving the West.
Well, I think we have to start with the very fundamental point that NATO has never been more united than it is now, and that Putin thought that Europe would freeze in the dark. In reality, NATO has become more strong. And I see that around the NATO table every time we meet. And indeed, defense ministers from NATO countries and beyond, over 50 countries, meet monthly as part of the Defense Contact Group organized by Secretary Austin. And our collaboration and our unity is palpable whenever we meet. For example, we sit around the table and we examine the capabilities of every country, and we seek to complement each other. So we are very much front and center in terms of aid to Ukraine, having put $1 billion of aid on the table thus far, but also in terms of training on equipment and capabilities.
But we've seen that the Germans, for example, in response to this invasion, we need to have a turning point. We've got to spend 2% of GDP on defense. Many countries have been significantly ramping that up. Japan has even made that announcement. Canada's still very far from that. Given what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, given the role that Canada is playing in NATO and with Russia and Ukraine, why aren't we seeing a faster step up on the defense side?
Well, what you are seeing is an increase in our defense spending in a way that is unprecedented. We are on an upward trajectory. We're increasing our defense spending by 70%. In fact, beginning in 2017, we committed $8 billion in our last federal budget in 2022. We're NATO's 6th largest defense budget. And on top of all that, put on the table almost $40 billion for NORAD modernization last year. So the trajectory is upward, Ian, and that's very positive. It was viewed quite positively when President Biden visited us 2 weeks ago.
When you look at the debate that's being had right now in the United States on TikTok, which is being also considered a national security issue, is that something you think the Canadians need to take up?
We have banned TikTok on all federal government devices.
Yes.
I have 4 children of my own and have told them that they're not
Have
to
you
be-
banned it with your 4 children?
Yes, I have. And I'll just say that it's extremely important for us to be aligned. We need to make sure that we are very much aligned with our allies, especially as the global strategic environment continues to change and the world becomes increasingly dark.
So if the Americans end up, either making a ban or saying they have to sell it, and as a consequence, they're effectively banned, not just from government, but we're talking as a country, you think the Canadians would have to follow that?
Well, we are very much aligned on security issues, generally speaking. And I will say that we have the communication security establishment here in Canada that is extremely close with the NSA. And we do look at each policy proposal in combination with what the United States is doing.
One more I want to ask you about, which I haven't discussed earlier in the show, is Haiti, because it's, not so far, doesn't have a government, right? I mean, basically run by gangs at this point. The Americans have been pressing Canada pretty hard, though it was friendly with the Biden-Trudeau meeting, on couldn't you do something? Couldn't you provide some troops, provide some policing to help? When Canada gets that message from the U.S., do you sort of shrug and go, hey, what about you guys?
Well, I think what our view is that we have to be focusing on Haitian-led solutions. As you know, we've made a number of decisions relating to sanctions against Haitians, as well as $100 million for the Haitian National Police in terms of providing equipment for them. Because the support that we provide has to be support that is welcomed. And that's why we are being very prudent about the support that we are putting on the ground and making sure that we are collaborating with multiple partners in the region.
It's hard to be Haitian-led when we don't know who's running Haiti, right? I mean, you're not doing polls down there.
But that's why we need to be prudent. We can't simply throw money at a problem and expect it to go away. And that is important not only in this instance, but across the board, whether we're talking about continental defense or aid to Ukraine or the Indo-Pacific. We have to be very thoughtful, very careful about what we are doing with our resources.
Now, I can't let you go without one final question about the border. Because of course that's another piece of incremental progress.
Yeah.
And here the Canadians are having some challenges, right, with Americans and others that are coming over. And there was a willingness of Canada to take a fair number, as well as to ship a fair number back. And how hard was this to get done?
Well, it was part of the cooperation and the spirit of collaboration that really imbued the visit of President Biden to Canada. The fact that we could extend the Safe Third Country Agreement to the entire border, the longest undefended border in the world, and to ensure also that we will be accepting more and more migrants now that we have this Safe Third Country Agreement applying across the board.
So you're saying we don't need to build a wall, is that what you're telling me?
I'm saying we don't need to build a wall.
That's good. That's very good. Minister Anand, wonderful to see you again.
Thanks so much, Ian.
Yeah.